We're back with the breaking news now 10 hours into a government shutdown. And so far, there doesn't appear to be any clear path out of it, with both Republicans and Democrats blaming the other side for the breakdown. And joining us now is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia from California. He's the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, good to have you here. We've seen a lot of shutdown threats in the last few years, but I know this is the first shutdown since you took office. What are you worried about right now, and what are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, look, I think it's really important to remember that federal workers work across the country. They're not just here in D.C. In fact, most federal workers are all across all of our states. And so their impact's going to happen across the country. And what is really crazy right now is we're here in D.C. Democrats have been here in Washington, D.C., trying to work with Republicans to actually get something done. And there's not a Republican to be found. They have left D.C., they've scattered to the home districts, while there is a shutdown that's impacting the American public. And this shutdown is clearly Donald Trump. Donald Trump is obsessed with giving tax breaks to billionaires and has no interest in actually fixing the healthcare challenge that's right in front of us. Premiums are about to skyrocket for the average person in this country who's on the Affordable Care Act, who needs these subsidies that are in place. So the fact that Republicans essentially want to not only have a shutdown, but allow these premiums to go up, I think is completely shameful right now.
Everybody's blaming each other. As we mentioned, who do the American people blame? Well, it's sort of split. This new NPR PBS News Marist poll we mentioned finds Republicans do get more of the blame than Democrats for a shutdown. There's still a big portion who don't know who to blame or say both are to blame. But this same polling also shows congressional Republicans have a 10% higher approval rating than congressional Democrats, 35% to 25%. What does that mean for your party in this moment?
Well, it's not going to be the case after this shutdown and what's going on right now. Let's be really clear. Republicans control the Senate, the House, and the White House. They control the entire government. And what they're putting in front of the American public right now is essentially a budget that cuts healthcare. People are going to have their premiums skyrocket because they do not want to negotiate and actually ensure that those costs stay lower. We've seen the prices of housing and where that's at as it relates to rent. We've seen grocery prices that are skyrocketing right now for American families. Healthcare costs are now also going to go up because Republicans would rather give large tax breaks to billionaires. And so Democrats are standing firm. We shouldn't give them one single vote at this minute as it relates to them trying to move this government forward to continue to rip away health care from the American public.
Well, Democrats did give a couple of votes and voted actually with Republicans last night in the Senate. I want to play some from Senate Majority Leader John Thune last night, suggesting there are some cracks in the Democratic caucus.
I think there are a lot of them over there who know that their leadership is walking them off the cliff and really want to do something other than follow the leader. But they are under so much pressure from the political left in this country, as you pointed out. All those special interest groups that Schumer's been coordinating with on message on this, they're simply, I think they're stuck. And they don't have an identity right now. And this is just an example that they really don't know what they're.
We are joined now by Democratic Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware. Senator, appreciate you taking the time, as we just laid out, talking about 750,000 Americans set to be furloughed due to this government shutdown. What do you say to those workers who may soon not see a paycheck?
Well, first of all, I take a step back and say, on day one, the president promised to lower costs. We're 254 days in, and not only are energy costs up, food costs are up, but we are on the precipice of healthcare costs going up. So those workers are already feeling the pain. And then, I was former Secretary of Labor in Delaware. Doesn't take a Secretary of Labor to know that when you fire and furlough people, they're going to be hurting and our unemployment numbers are going to go up. And so in this moment, it was important for Democrats to say, this is not business as usual. We are on the brink of a healthcare crisis. And so that's what we're standing up for. And we are standing up for those American workers.
Listen to what we heard from the vice president this morning, blaming Democrats for the shutdown.
Unfortunately, it was one faction of one branch of government, the far left faction of the Senate Democrats, who decided to shut down the people's government. There are critical services that the Democrats have taken hostage because they have a policy disagreement that they are open to work with us on, but they shouldn't be shutting the government down because of that policy disagreement.
What is your response to that?
Well, first of all, this isn't simply about a policy disagreement. Literally, 4th of July, this administration and the Republicans in Congress took away health care from folks. And so what we're saying is restore that health care before this becomes a catastrophe and people are hurt even more. I think it's also important to remember that the White House, the Senate, and the House are controlled by Republicans. And so I was a House member. When I was in the House, we negotiated. And what we're seeing here is not a level of seriousness. If you're serious, you don't go home. You would be here. And that's what we say to the House of Representatives. If you're serious, you would be listening to the people and you would not be canceling out their health care. You would not be doing memes. This is a serious moment. And what we need is for them to come to the table seriously on behalf of the American people.
But is there a plan B in case that doesn't happen? Should this shutdown drag out and Republicans dig in, Democrats can't get what you're asking for when it comes to those health care subsidies and the fight for health care funding?
Here's the reality. They have the power. They're in charge. They need to come to the table. And what I'm seeing and feeling at home in Delaware, I have a business person, Jan, who actually suffered from cancer. When I was in the House, she told me if it were not for the Affordable Care Act, she would not have been able to have health care. She is concerned. She represents the half of small business owners are on the Affordable Care Act. When you look at farmers and ranchers in this country, 1/4 on the Affordable Care Act. When you look at moms and babies and the number of births that are given because of our health care. We're not saying we got a perfect health care system, but what we are saying is that we don't want to break it even more, and we don't want people's prices to skyrocket. And they have the power, they have the ability. And I don't know if people are telling the president, maybe he's not hearing what this really means to people, but people are already hurting. And we have a chance, an opportunity, if they just come back to work and get to the negotiating table. That's it.
Congressman, what say you?
Well, first, it's disappointing for any Democrat in the Senate to go along with Trump's plan. They should all be an absolute no. What people need to understand is that right now, if we don't dig in this fight, the average American is going to see their premiums for health care go up. And in some cases, it's going to double if they're on the Affordable Care Act. That is unconscionable. And it's not at this moment what people need. People need assistance. Affordability is the most important thing right now. And for healthcare costs to go up, when grocery costs are going up, I think it's important right now for the country and Democrats to stand tall and not give in a single vote. So I completely disagree with that approach of those couple Senate Democrats, and I hope that the rest of them stand tall.
Congressman, in the past, the party that has sort of tried to force a specific policy goal going into a shutdown ultimately didn't get what it wanted. The last shutdown, and the longest ever, was over border wall funding. It ended without the money for the wall. Another partial shutdown was over DACA protections. It ended without a deal. Even in 2013, after Republicans refused to pass a spending bill funding the Affordable Care Act, that shutdown ended without any of the changes Republicans wanted to the ACA. So why do you think this time will be different and that Democrats will get what you want?
Because the American public right now are demanding that Donald Trump actually meets his campaign promises of lowering costs for Americans. He's done none of that. He campaigned to bring down the cost of groceries, to bring down the cost of health care, to bring down the cost of housing. What's happened? Everything has gone up. And right now, if we don't stand tall for the American public, and look, shutdowns are hard. It's actually impacting real people. People are going to be affected.
Yep.
But so they will also be affected if their health care costs skyrocket. Over the next couple of weeks, people are going to start getting letters from their insurance companies telling them that their premiums are going to go up. That needs to stop. And so for us, we're in this fight, and Democrats in the Senate need to match the energy that's coming out right now of the House and not give any single vote to Trump's budget.
Appreciate the message. Appreciate you coming on and sharing the Democratic perspective, and yours in particular this morning.
Donald Trump is once again dragging the country into chaos of his own design. 10 hours into a government shutdown. The problem is not negotiation or compromise. The problem is that he has zero interest in doing either of those things. He thrives on the fight, on the blame game, on the appearance of strength, while families across the country brace for missed paychecks and rising bills. Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate. They had every tool to prevent this shutdown. Instead, they walked away from the table. Democrats remained in Washington ready to negotiate. Republicans scattered to their districts. And Trump, as always, framed the crisis as someone else's fault. The cost will be borne not by politicians, but by federal workers, small business owners, and families already struggling with the cost of food, housing, and healthcare. At the center of this fight is our healthcare. Premiums under the Affordable Care Act are poised to double for many Americans. Democrats argue that the shutdown is not just about keeping the lights on, it's about stopping that spike in costs. Republicans, meanwhile, insist on holding the budget hostage while pushing tax breaks for billionaires. Of course. The logic is familiar. Protect the wealthy and leave working families to figure out how to pay for groceries and prescriptions on their own. The political spin is relentless, too. Polls show Republicans taking more blame for the shutdown, but they also show higher approval ratings than Democrats. Trump and his allies seize on that gap as a license to dig in deeper. They call Democrats obstructionists. They accuse them of playing politics. Yet the record is clear. Shutdowns in 2013, 2018, and 2019 ended up with Republicans walking away empty-handed. Policy goals went unmet. Americans suffered. And still, here we are again, another Trump shutdown. The danger is not only the shutdown itself, but the pattern it reveals. Governing under Trump is just a cycle of brinkmanship, crisis, and collapse. Nothing gets solved. Costs rise, trust in institutions erode, and while Americans demand stability, Trump delivers chaos and disruption because it serves him politically. This shutdown is not about ideology, it's about priorities. Trump prioritizes billionaires over workers, conflict over compromise. The longer this continues, the clearer the lesson becomes. Ordinary Americans are the collateral damage, and that's acceptable for him. The irony here is impossible to ignore. Republicans had months to prepare a budget, to reconcile differences, to govern. Instead, they purposely ran out the clock. Then they just turned around and declared the Democrats the obstructionists. The Republicans control the entire government. This is a pattern that's repeated itself again and again and again, shifting responsibility when the crisis finally erupts, and then Republicans being like, oops, wasn't us. For Trump, that pattern is not a bug, it is the feature. He thrives on last-minute brinksmanship because it creates the image of him as the indispensable negotiator, the man at the center of the storm, even though he's the one walking away from the table.